Okay, I'm pleased to introduce our next part of our agenda, which is a panel on Bioenergy Solutions. Can it shape the transition to a low-carbon future? Okay, so great topic here. We have 4 panelists. Okay, our structure is going to be the same as I believe your other panels have been today, where each panelist will talk for about 15 minutes. Then we've got 15 minutes at the end for people to bring forward their questions. So please save your questions to the end, and then bring them forward and challenge our panelists with them. Okay. So our first speaker, I'm going to give all the bios right now, I think, and then we'll move through you. Okay, so our first speaker will be Rashmi Chandra. Rashmi is a postdoctoral researcher in civil and environmental engineering at the University of Waterloo. She's obtained her PhD in biological sciences from the Academy of Scientific and Innovative Research at CSIR-IICT. She worked at Tec de Monterrey, Mexico, and Arizona State University. Her research work has focused on waste to energy through strategic regulation of photosynthetic machinery towards diverse bioenergy generation routes and extensively studied the process of photofermentative hydrogenesis, biophotovoltaics, and algophotochemical synthesis. She's got 22 publications in peer-reviewed journals. Just fantastic. Okay. 7 book chapters along with several conference communications to her credit. She's received the R.N. Sarma Memorial Best Junior Research Fellow Award in 2012, the AUCBT Excellence Award for 2013, and the Heem Scholar for year 2014 for her research contributions. She's also a member of the National System of Researchers of, I'm sorry, I'm probably not going to say this right, Conocite, Mexico? Not too bad, okay. Okay. So anyhow, highly accomplished speaker. Our second speaker will be Trevor Charles. Dr. Charles is a professor in the Department of Biology at the University of Waterloo. He is currently director of the Waterloo Center for Microbial Research, and I'm going to add he was a past associate director of the Center for Bioengineering and Biotechnology. He's also founder and CSO of Metagenome Bio. Okay, Trevor carries out research in bacterial genetics and is an expert in analyzing genetic material recovered directly from environmental samples, known as functional metagenomics. In 2015, Dr. Charles was honored with an Ontario Genomics Institute Spark Award for an innovative project that uses waste methane to create renewable bioplastics. Third speaker is Tej Gidda, am I saying? Yeah? Okay, thank you. Tej is Vice President of GHD and works in the fields of carbon emission reductions and waste management with a focus on diversion technologies. He's been involved in a significant number of composting, anaerobic digestion, mixed waste processing, energy from waste, and advanced biosolids treatment technologies in Ontario and elsewhere, as well as landfill gas management and leachate treatment. Our third speaker is John Wen, who's an associate professor in mechanical and mechatronics engineering and chemical engineering at the University of Waterloo. He's also the director of the Laboratory for Emerging Energy Research and a member of the American Society of Mechanical Engineering and the American Chemical Society. Professor Wen's research expertise is in biofuel combustion, CO2 capture and storage, the combustion of generated particulates, energy utilization and storage technologies, and nanotechnology-based energy devices. His research interests include biomass gasification, the synthesis, characterization, and applications of nanomaterial, the development of nanothermite and energetic nanocomposites, and the EPD fabrication of nanotube and nanowire-based electrodes for advanced energy devices. So we have a very exciting panel here. Thank you very much for joining us today. Rashmi, I'll have you start first. Thank you.
A very good afternoon to all of you. I'm Rashmi, and today I'm going to talk about the bioenergy prospects, what I have worked in past 10 years during my PhD and my recent experiences. Okay, so this is the topic, how we can use the waste as a resource for bioenergy production. So why is the bioenergy? When we see the world energy outlook, our energy demands are increasing, and day to day we are emitting a lot of CO2 and making the whole thing unsustainable. There is a second graph which I want to project, where we have a whole increment in the global temperature. And if we see to the year 2017, where we already crossed the trajectory of 6 degrees, it means if we follow that path, we will increase the Earth's temperature by 6 degrees Celsius. And there is another trajectory which is 2 degrees Celsius. And if we follow that path, the Earth's temperature will increase by 2. But we already crossed that limit of 2017, and we already in the trajectory of 6 degree increment in global temperature. So considering those situations, we have high energy demand, we have CO2 emission, we have waste generation, and all these 3 parameters making the whole Earth so unsustainable. So to maintain the environmental sustainability, we need 3 aspects. One is renewable energy, zero carbon footprint, and third one is to remediate our waste. And all these things projected me to work on the bioenergy process. And if we see all the energy available to the Earth's atmosphere, solar energy is vast in comparison all the renewable and non-renewable resources. And I want to focus it, if from now onwards, if you stop our coal reserves using by 80%, then also we are not able to meet that trajectory of only 2 degree increment. So why I started my research with the solar energy and photosynthesis, because photosynthesis is the only process which brings the energy to the biosphere, and this is the point of starting. So considering that point, I worked in 3 energy aspects. One is hydrogen production, second is bioelectricity generation, and third is biodiesel production from algal biocells. And using energy from the solar radiations, biomass, wastewater, and finally the CO2 as a carbon source. My first experiment was on photobiological hydrogen production. The hydrogen production using acidogenic fermentation is a well-matured strategy. I started integrating the photobiological processes so that we can use the effluent from those reactors and generate more of hydrogen from the system. So this is one of the experiments where I compared the augmented system and non-augmented system. Augmented is simply anaerobic sludge, which is treated, and second one is anaerobic sludge augmented with photosynthetic bacteria, where we enhance the hydrogen production by 5 times. And then we found some issues like there is a hydrogen production was depleted, which was because of the pheophytonization of these photosynthetic pigments, which we later recovered by adding more of photosynthetic bacteria to it, which is because of the acidification of these pigments. The metal ion at the center of these bacterial chlorophyll gets replaced by the hydrogen atom because of the acidity. We also see what is the COD removal efficiency. COD removal efficiency was not that much enhanced. In normal system, it was 49%, and when we see the augmented, it's 60%. But when we saw the VFA, like volatile fatty acids, that concentration decreased to a higher extent. It means the photosynthetic bacteria is utilizing these VFAs and producing more of hydrogen. So these are the various reactors which I studied, like starting from the bench scale to a semi-pilot scale. These all are the reactors, and I want to show this reactor, which is the outcome of 10 years of study, where we have established a pilot plant operation using the food waste, and it's already installed in CSIR-IICT, where it is a 2-stage process. One is acidogenic fermentation, and followed by the methanogenic process, and third, we have an anaerobic treatment plant, where we treat the wastewater to a higher extent, and there we integrated with the bioplastic also. So the first part, where is the hydrogen reactor, first is the equalization tank, where we collect all the wastewater. We send it to the hydrogen bioreactor at a pH of 6, because that is the pH where hydrogen production is more efficient. We collect the hydrogen, we use the CO2 scrubbers, basically they are KOH solutions. We isolate the hydrogen gas from the CO2, and then we again pump the effluent to the methane producing bioreactors. There we recover methane, and again we treat the wastewater to a higher extent, and then the whole wastewater goes to like a settling tank where we can go for further treatment. This is a mature technology already installed. So my next setup was a photosynthetic microbial fuel cell operation. First, I'll just give you a brief how it works. There is a two chamber, one is anode, another is cathode. Anode, we put it the wastewater, and in cathode is basically we pump it, like provide oxygen as a terminal electron acceptor. In anodic chamber, there is a bacterial population which consume all the organic content in the wastewater and convert it into electron and proton. Electron get captured by the electrode and proton travels to the cathode through proton exchange membrane, and during that process, we build up a potential difference, and that creates electricity. So this is a simple setup how a bench scale reactor looks like. We worked on a sandwich model. Top is the cathode, bottom is the anode, and in between the PEM is sandwiched. So this was the first study where we studied how the current and OCB potentials are varying. This was in 2012. Now we have more of sophisticated instrument where we can track it more better. And that time this studies was one of the good things where we got a cover page for Journal of Bioresource Technology. And we characterize what is the bacterial population present in that. In that, alpha proteobacter is the major, which are the more of responsible for bioelectricity production. And these are the various reactors what we worked, starting from the double chambered, which is very similar to the galvanic cell, what we studied in chemistry. And the galvanic cell, we actually changed the anode chamber to a biological system, and where all the biological reactions happen, and with the help of electrodes, we are able to capture these electrons and proton and produce a bioelectricity. Initially, we studied a double chamber, and then we switched to a single chamber, and we finally end up to a pilot plant setup where we have anode and cathode chamber, and it is well-efficient system which can produce like 1 volt of electricity throughout. And based on this thing, I further move on to one thing, how we can make it more viable or available to everyone. We worked on plant microbial fuel cell where we use a potted plant, we insert the electrodes, and then we track down how the bioelectricity generation produced. These systems were efficient to showing us the bioelectricity production, but this system is one of my favorite, where with this we can produce like, we can run a clock or a small device 24/7 without any external input, where we are using just wastewater. First tank is with a plant, which is Icornia, and then hydrilla and some algae we use in successive plants, and that's how we are able to maintain a potential difference and produce the electricity. Initially, I designed the system like the first one with a sketch, but it ended up with like as the tank and all the things you can see, but the systems efficiently work, and it was get recognized by Akshay Urya is a magazine produced by MNRE, in that this work is also highlighted. And my third part of this thing is I worked on biodiesel production. So basically what I did, I grow microalgae in the wastewater and extract that oil and use it as a biofuel. So this is the methodology. I'll just really go quick. So this is one graph where I did a comparison, like how much of oil we can extract from algal biomass. So if we have 1 kg of algal biomass, we can maximally extract 250 grams of oil from it. And from 250 gram, only 110 gram is the biodiesel. So its productivity is less, I agree, but we are working on the integration strategy, how we can enhance the biodiesel productivity from algal biomass. And this work, I did it with Arizona State University, where we worked on the extraction process, how we can extract efficiently these kind of fuels from the algae. So here we did the electrofermentation. What we did, we tried to convert the unsaturated fatty acid to saturated fatty acid through these reactions. So one is electrofermentation and one is direct biohydrogenation. So these two strategies, we can enhance the fuel quality of algal biodiesel. So in that, this strategy worked, and even by this process, we can enhance the efficiency by 5 to 10%. And this is the last part what I want to discuss here. What diesel right now we are using, it's somewhere like you can say million years ago or 1,000 years ago, it's get deposited by algal cells, and which we are extracting out as a petrochemicals. So what if the similar kind of fatty acid composition produced by any kind of microalgae or organisms right now? So this work was, I consider cyclotella as a diatoms. There is a hypothesis that diatoms are responsible for all the biodiesels, all the diesels what we are taking out from the petrochemical rocks as a diesel usage. So in this one, what I did, I grow them in a defined media and check how the biodiesel composition is. And if you see the biodiesel composition of the FAME mix, it is exactly the similar what the commercial diesel we are using. So my hypothesis is that in spite of tackling any kind of microalgae like chlorella or sanidesmus, why not use the diatoms as a source of diesel for present scenario? So in this, firstly I extracted the biodiesel, and then we end up with frustules, which are the cytoskeleton of these microalgae. And these cytoskeleton also I characterize, and these cytoskeletons are actually nanoparticles, and that we can use it further as a drug delivery vector. I didn't work on the drug delivery, but yes, I synthesized this particle which can be further used. And these are the images of these cyclotella frustules, which can be used further. So at the end, I would like to conclude it like hybrid strategy, if we apply for biohydrogen production, it works. And if we talk about the microbial fuel cells, it will work. And if we integrate the whole process, if we talk about sustainability, the integration is only answer. If we are able to integrate multiple things like hydrogen, bioelectricity, and biodiesel in one platform, then we will have an answer, and then we can give a solution which is sustainable. So at the end, I want to project this one like we did take, make, and dispose, and at the end, we end up with the waste. So leaving that topic, we should go for something which is circular bioeconomy. Use the biomass wisely and get all the products what we need efficiently. So thank you, and these are the dolphins. I love them, that's why I keep them. Thank you. And any question, let me know.
Good. I'm happy to tell you about this new project that we're starting that has a number of different partners, but a major an industry partner here is Fairlife. How many of you in the room have heard of Fairlife or tried Okay, we have at least one person, 2 people, 3 people. So Fairlife is new to the Canadian market, and basically they are a dairy producer. So they make a really interesting product by taking milk, separating it out into 6 or 7 different fractions, and then putting them together in different composition to make a healthier milk. And as a result of that, they have a huge amount of lactose waste. So lactose is a sugar. It can be used by microbes to grow. And we're interested in, can we use that sugar, that lactose sugar, to have the microbes produce bioplastics? So why bioplastics? Well, for Fairlife, they're really interested in being able to make the packaging for their milk. And so I'll show you that in a minute. So the other partners in this project are a company, Metagenome Bio, and another one, Myera Group. These are both smaller Canadian biotech companies based in Waterloo and based in Winnipeg. So our key challenge is this. We all know about the big problem with plastics. Plastics do not degrade very well in the environment. They accumulate. They take a lot of energy to produce. So, 10% of our fossil fuels is used to make plastics. If we can use an alternate source to produce the bioplastics, and those bioplastics are degradable, then that's a huge advantage. So how do we actually replace all of those fossil fuel-derived plastics with bioplastics? The big challenge is really an economic one. And the economic challenge is related to the cost of the feedstock. So if we can use a feedstock that is a waste feedstock that has no value or very low value, and we upgrade its value by converting it to something of higher value, like plastics, then you've solved a lot of your problem there. And you also solve the problem of the waste as well. So that's the opportunity here. The opportunity is to produce new biodegradable polymers for packaging material, for foods mostly. We have to develop the scale, the economy, the infrastructure, all for this purpose. The lactose, as I've mentioned, it's a waste product right now. You would be upgrading the value by producing something that has utility. The target plastic that we are looking at is PET. So this is what you see in a lot of the bottles for different beverages. The nice thing here is that Fairlife happens to be a subsidiary of Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola is the largest beverage company in the world, and so they have a lot of packaging requirements. So this is sort of a pilot project for Coca-Cola. So why is Fairlife in the Canadian market? It's very difficult for a US company, a dairy company, to enter the Canadian market. The reason is because they are developing dairy production in Peterborough. So they're developing a plant there to produce their product. And so they've received a special dispensation to enter the Canadian market ahead of time as they're building their plant and developing their market. So our vision is to have a facility to produce bioplastics associated with the new plant in Peterborough, where we go directly from the waste that is produced in that plant to bioplastic. So what's going to help us get there? Well, we've got a couple of requirements. One is that we have to have the appropriate microbes to produce the plastics that will replace this particular type of plastics that's used currently by Fairlife. And that's where the company Metagenome Bio comes in. So Metagenome Bio can do genome engineering to take those bacterial strains that make a certain type of bioplastic and modify them so that they make the plastic of interest, and also they're able to do that using lactose. The other one, Myera Group. Myera, they have acquired a pharmaceutical facility, a pharmaceutical facility in Winnipeg. It used to be a CanGene facility that has extensive fermentation capability, so up to 2,000 or 3,000 liters. So we can do all of our pilot work at that facility. So we're focusing on PET. There's the Fairlife bottle, and there are certain characteristics that the PET material has that makes it ideal for their product. Our task is really to be able to match those properties of the currently used plastic with our bioplastic. So how do we do that? These are the plastics that we use, the material that we use. Those are bacterial cells. That's an electron micrograph showing the bacterial cells, a cross-section. And those deposits that you see within those bacterial cells, those are the polyhydroxyalkanoids. And those can have a number of different properties depending on the structure of the polymer. So we need to engineer the microbe so that it will be able to match up with the structure that we're interested in. So we are able to do that using different types of Pseudomonas organisms, and also by introducing genetic material from outside of these particular organisms. We like to use genetic material that's isolated directly from soils or wastewaters, anywhere where you might find a diverse microbial community with diverse genetics. So here you can see some of the plastics that we've been able to produce and test in some of our initial experiments. And it depends on how you actually culture these organisms, what you give them to feed on. That will determine the properties. This just shows some of those physical and mechanical properties of these particular PHAs produced using different substrates. Oops. And of course, thermal properties are very important to match up as well. I'm not going to go through these details. The take-home message is that there's a lot of variation in the properties that we can match up to the commercially used petrochemically derived plastics. So we need to define the targets. In this case, the target is the PET bottle. We need to develop the strains genetically, develop the polymers, evaluate them, then scale up at the Myera plant in Winnipeg, and then eventually get to commercial production. And luckily, we have a lot of partners in here that are very capable. Phase one is what we're at right now, is basically the production and evaluation of those polymers. We'll move then to pilot scale, commercial demonstration, and then hopefully everything will move towards a commercial facility. So in summary then, our goal is to establish an agile full cycle process for development of biodegradable packaging materials tailored to the needs of a specific application, and that is the Fairlife bottle. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. So I'm Gidda. I'm from a consulting firm called GHD, just up the road here on Phillip Street. So what I'm going to talk to you about is a little bit of bioenergy type projects, and just a little bit of background. So my job really is to implement projects and sort of make them happen in the bioenergy space. I think sort of my main message would be that we're already in a bioenergy industry. There's a lot of activity in this area all across North America. We're a little bit far behind sort of our compatriots in Europe and struggling rapidly to catch up, but that's where we are. So we're seeing quite a wave of this occur in North America right now. So I'm pretty actively involved with that with a team of about 60 people that exclusively work on this. So you're going to have to apologize. I have a very interesting sort of take on how I do my presentations. I'll show you what I mean by that. How do I go to the next slide here? Is it this one? Okay. All right. My kids love me for these presentations. I will explain what this all means. It actually means something. Okay, so that's a banana, and that I think is a tomato. So one of the things I do, and that works quite well, is we take food waste, post-consumer or pre-consumer. All that means is before you eat it or after you eat it. And we take that material and we anaerobically digest it, which is the AD piece here. So anaerobic digestion is a very old process. It's a microbial process, biological process. It's very natural. If I take a whole bunch of garbage and I put it into a hole in the ground, commonly known as a landfill, that garbage is going to anaerobically decompose due to the activity of methanotrophs, and you're going to get some kind of production of a gas. We sometimes call that gas biogas. It's typically 55% methane, 45% carbon dioxide, and a whole bunch of trace compounds, but that methane can be used. So that will happen naturally if you make this hole in the ground. Part of the move in North America right now is to accelerate that process. Anaerobic digestion is utilized at wastewater treatment plants for sludge processing all the time. We are now in an era where we're trying to employ that technology for food waste, so the stuff that you generate from your own kitchens and your homes. I imagine most people here live in Waterloo. If you do live in Waterloo and you have a house or an apartment, you may have a green bin. That green bin that you wheel out to your curb every garbage day is the material that you would typically go and now put into one of these anaerobic digestion systems. So when I have a number like this, 3.6 MT, so that means 3.6 million tons That's the amount of organic waste that we generate in Ontario per year, approximately, give or take. It could be 4 million easily. That's a lot of material. The vast majority of that gets into landfills right now. What I'm talking about is taking more of this material through an anaerobic digestion pathway, producing biogas. I found this morning's presentations on the electrical grids really interesting, and I asked a really poorly formulated question around the corresponding intelligence of the natural gas distribution grid relative to the electrical grid. So we're talking about electricity grids getting smarter, offering distributed generation coming into it and using that existing grid as a pipeline to move energy around. Beneath our feet, there are thousands and thousands of kilometers of natural gas pipelines that bring supply, distributed or transmitted, to us, our homes and our businesses, to be used. What's happened in the space of bioenergy from all this food waste and organic waste is that we have stopped making electricity from this material. There are no renewable electricity projects from biogas underway anymore in North America, really, other than in select locations. What we make out of this gas now is this product. This is renewable natural gas. So imagine taking this biogas product that I mentioned and refining it, stripping out all the impurities, and making a product that is chemically the same as the natural gas that we use in our furnaces. That's what we do with this product. And this is actually very easy to do. It's off-the-shelf equipment. It's generally membranes, pressure swing absorption systems, or water wash systems and solubility systems. So very easy to do. So that's our market now. And really, what people are doing with this product is a little bit closed loop. So imagine taking your food waste, which a garbage truck will collect. That garbage truck will navigate down the roadway. It will go to a processing facility with this organic waste. That organic waste will then be processed into this biogas product. That biogas will then be cleaned to renewable natural gas. It will then be injected into those pipes underneath our feet. It will then distribute and disperse amongst the distribution system and be used. And the people who operate those garbage trucks in the first place will then take that natural gas, this clean natural gas, and they'll use it to fuel the garbage trucks that go and get the garbage in the first place. And that is really the closed loop nature of this system. The city of Surrey in British Columbia has already done this. The city of Toronto here is just in the process of doing this. I'll show you a picture of one of their plants in a little bit. But that's our market, and that's the bioenergy piece of anaerobic digestion that's really occurring across North America. We are 5% of the way that Europe has already achieved. So we have an awful lot of facilities to build across North America. That's my job, is design and build these facilities. A lot of our waste, 70% of our waste goes into a landfill right now. The Netherlands, landfills 10% of their waste or thereabouts. So for us to get from 70 down to 10 is a pretty big trajectory. It's going to take decades to do that. Okay. So I'm a terrible artist. Okay, my kids tell me this all the time. People often ask me if my kids drew these. They didn't. I drew these. That's a blue bin. So at the end of your curb, you also put out a blue bin based on materials, right? So you have paper and cardboard and film plastics and all kinds of plastics. Does anyone know what this is? I would almost give you $5 if you can identify what that blob is. You'll also make me very happy if you can identify what this blob is. Someone take a guess. I would really like it. Yes? Yes, but which country? It's not Canada. That's not Canada. Not that bad. It's China. Okay? So it is China. Thank you. I owe you money. I won't give it to you, but I owe you. So China, so really interesting, obviously, the waste management industry. I think of waste management, I hate this term waste management. I don't even know what that term means anymore. It's a biomass industry. It's a resource industry. All this stuff we send to disposal has energy. It has a phenomenal amount of energy that we entomb in holes in the ground and then bury, right? So I don't know why we think that or why we missed that opportunity. I'll give you one actually really good example. The gentleman, Chris Ford, who was here this morning, who with operations for the University of Waterloo, he said something very interesting. He said, natural gas is my #1 consumption and consumable, right? And my biggest emission. And he said, well, I can't produce it myself because I don't have a natural gas well in the University of Waterloo that I can take gas from. And I'm like, well, I think you do have a natural gas well because the University of Waterloo, with this many students, produces how much organic waste? Why don't you just take that waste, process it in a very simple technology and produce your own gas and offset this massive energy signature that you have and carbon signature that you have that you're very concerned about? These are solutions that are sort of coming, right? So when I look at this box, this blue box, there's all kinds of stuff in it. Now, the reason I put China up is because China has done something over the last couple of years that you've probably seen on the CBC. Waste is very topical these days. China said, look, all this blue box stuff, a whole bunch of that used to just go to China. And the reason it went to China is because no one here developed a recycling industry. So we have recycling, but we don't have an industry. There's nowhere in North America, for the most part, to take that product and actually turn it into something new, to replace virgin product. It really doesn't exist. We relied on China to take all that material and let them deal with it. And then they came along and they put down the sword and they said, okay, that's fantastic, but your stuff is too dirty, and if it's not super pure, we're not taking it anymore. So the vast majority of our recyclables, and this is absolutely true, that you put out in this blue box that gets collected separately and we spend a lot of money on, is now being landfilled across North America because we don't have an industry. Okay, so a couple sort of future pieces of this, things that we're very interested in as a firm that develops these types of facilities, is biofuels. So if you can imagine, there's a lot of energy in this box: paper, cardboard, plastics. Can you convert them using high temperature processes into other liquid fuels or gaseous fuels? We've already heard about biochar today. You can pyrolyze or gasify these materials. You can turn them into a synthetic gas product that can be then catalytically converted into methanol or ethanol. You can also process that syngas, which is mostly carbon monoxide and hydrogen. You can process it into pure hydrogen. You can methanate the carbon dioxide and the hydrogen into methane if you wanted to make more renewable natural gas. And that's really kind of the future, because this 5% is a really interesting number. If I took every single biological piece of organic matter in North America, all of it, everything that went into a wastewater treatment plant and everything that you discard from food waste, and I converted all of it into renewable natural gas, you would only displace about 5% of all the natural gas flowing in the natural gas system that we rely on so heavily. It's not enough. It's not even close to being enough. But instead of recycling, and this is going to be maybe hopefully a little bit of a controversial term, why not stop recycling if we don't have a recyclables market and turn all this stuff in this box that we're landfilling into a liquid fuel or a gaseous fuel and take that 5% up to 50%? That's our trajectory. That is actually, if I had to guess and predict, that's where the North American market is actually going to go. Instead of building a recycling system to reuse these solid materials, I think they'll be turned into liquid and gaseous products. That's where the industry is trending. This thing here, I won't even ask you if you can tell what that is, but that's a garbage bag or a garbage can, and that's a garbage bag in it, right? So that's just, that's the third thing that you curb, right? So you're going to put out your green bin with your organics, and you put out your blue bin, and then you have garbage. So what do you do with the garbage? What is the last piece? The piece that's not organic, that's not recyclable, but still has appreciable energy value. So a lot of what we talk about for that is hydrogen, and I'm exceptionally interested in Rashmi's presentation on biohydrogen. We're actually doing some work with one of Rashmi's colleagues and with Trevor on the conversion here at the University of Waterloo, of the conversion of organic waste directly into hydrogen. Because it's not hard for us to take organic waste, as I said before, and turn it into methane. That happens naturally. And I could, I guess, take a methane molecule, 1 carbon, 4 hydrogen, and steam reform it into the hydrogen product that we want into the system. But there's a lot of inefficiencies in those steps. What if we bypassed those inefficiencies and found a way to take this organic waste and directly turn it into hydrogen that we could then use for fueling? And I think the question there, hydrogen was mentioned today, but not a lot. I'm exceptionally interested in hydrogen. When you put hydrogen through a fuel cell, you have no carbon dioxide emission, biogenic or non-biogenic. You have none. It is a very, very carbon efficient fuel. Question is where are you going to use it? Well, the chemical industry in Sarnia uses exceptional amounts of hydrogen, but the other player that's going to push this, and we've talked today about fuel cell vehicles, is car manufacturers like Toyota. Toyota is deploying fuel cell vehicles. They will do it. They've already done it in Japan. They run cars on hydrogen. They want to be here. They want to be in North America. They want to sell their product here. We have very limited hydrogen supply, and any hydrogen supply that we have right now is carbon dirty, because all it is natural gas taken from the ground, deep deposits, brought up to the surface, and steam reformed to liberate the hydrogen from the carbon. If we can interrupt that chain and disrupt that chain and produce renewable hydrogen through things like Rashmi was talking about, you have a real benefit and a purely renewable fuel without any carbon emission as you operate your vehicles for these long-range vehicles and trucks, as we heard this morning. So that's a vision, as I see it, of the future. Just a quick note on economics. I work for a private firm, so we're profit-driven, honestly, but I don't think there's anything wrong with doing good things for the environment and making money. I think those two things are mutually compatible. California, it's a place where I work. I spend time in California. I have an office in California and staff. California introduced a regulation 2 years ago to ban organic food waste from going into their landfills. That's a 40 million person market. California is bigger than Canada. Their GDP is $2.65 trillion. Ours is $1.5 trillion. They're far bigger than us. 40 million person market banned organic waste from going into landfill, but all they have is landfills, so now they need to build infrastructure. They need to separate this material, they need to process it, they need to turn it into something. It's an incredibly vigorous market. Our estimate is they need about 150 new facilities, okay? 150 of these processing facilities, and I'll show you one in a second. Each one of those facilities costs about $100 million to build, let alone to operate. And you multiply those numbers, and then you start adding a lot of zeros. It just gives you an idea of what the size of this bioenergy market is for just one state in one part of the United States. Right? So it's a massive area. It keeps a lot of us in the consulting world very busy and very actively engaged in finding solutions. But I will say, again, anaerobic digestion has been around, well, probably millions of years. It's a natural process that produces biogas. I'm interested in the production of higher value-added fuels like hydrogen or ethanol or all these other products that require a little bit more time and effort to actually produce. This plant here, this is my last slide actually. I didn't want to sort of talk too much, I probably already have. This is the City of Toronto's plant. The City of Toronto is really interesting. They're one of my biggest clients, they are my biggest client. They take all their food waste, and it's a very sort of complicated green bin food waste, the stuff that they take. They actually allowed diapers into their green bin system, they allowed pet waste. They allow you to put grocery bags around your organics. So you just imagine what that looks like once you package that up and you shove it in your green bin and it shows up. It's a complete mess. It looks like garbage. This plant takes that really messy stuff and through a whole bunch of mechanical equipment, opens those bags, solubilizes all the organics completely into a very digestible slurry, and delivers that slurry into these tanks out here. That's an anaerobic digester. This plant, by the way, is right next to Pearson Airport. If you're going north on the 427, look to your right and look for something very shiny and that looks like a spaceship, because you'll see it. It's right there. No one knows it's there. No one's ever smelled it. No one's ever really probably even seen it, but it's right there. So this processes 75,000 tons of green bin material, which is a lot, per year, in two 5,000 cubic meter tanks. So those are the reactors. Rashmi was talking about reactors. So this is the ultimate size of a reactor, really big tanks, and makes biogas all day long, which will soon be purified to renewable natural gas. So an existing plant, it's been there since 2014. It's still probably the most advanced facility in North America. The city owns it. They operate it, and we're just helping them build their second one in the middle of Toronto right now. So this is a real economy. This isn't sort of fictional. It's a real industry with real on-the-ground projects. This one is in California. This is a 3D rendering or model of a plant in San Bernardino. This is a 250,000 ton per year plant, so it's huge. In California, they do everything really big. This is the biggest one I've ever done. And what it's going to do is it's going to take a lot of food waste from Los Angeles, process it. It's going to turn it into biogas. It will then take solids out of the digesters, dewater them using a centrifuge. Then it's going to dry out those solids, and then it's going to pyrolyze those solids. And it's going to create, as we heard, it's going to create biochar for delivery into the local agricultural market. It'll also create bio-oils to circulate back into the digester for another kick at the biological can. And it'll also produce some additional energy, pyrogas, to put back into the drying process. The mass balance on this is such that it'll get 700 tons per day of waste coming in the front door. And it's going to produce 10 tons of waste at the back door, but it's not really waste, it's just biochar. Incredibly energy efficient plant. The most modern digester project in North America, I would say, and it's just in construction now. It's not running yet, but it will be. City of Montreal, Ville de Montréal. So I have a contract with a very big multinational company called Suez. They're from Paris, and they have hired us to design an anaerobic digestion plant for the City of Montreal's organic waste. City of Montreal is just now going down the route of separating their food waste and doing something with it. So this is what the plant is going to look like. We're just in design, receiving area. Here's the anaerobic digesters. There's a gas bubble to hold natural gas. And this plant will also produce renewable natural gas, push it into the local gas distribution system, and fuel the garbage trucks that come into this plant in the first place with the feedstock. City of Montreal's second plant right here is a composting plant. We're in design of that now, but this is hopefully a little bit of a testament to where this industry is. These are just nice pictures. These aren't built yet. So we have multiple of these types of plants on the go across North America now, and that's really where the bioenergy industry as it relates to waste management is. And with that, I will conclude with my last funny cartoon. I love this cartoon. Thank you.
I understand that we are running behind the schedule, so I'm going to keep my talk short. Right? So, but 5 minutes is probably too short. Okay. So bioenergy, we understand bioenergy is green. But is bioenergy clean? So I'm going to focus on second keyword, clean, right? And myself is from mechanical and mechatronics engineering, so a little bit far from biology and chemical engineering. Well, so yeah, I'll skip lots of slides, but hopefully I can have my major point across. And so that's kind of my research. So we're looking at the alternative fuels, and we have some combustion-based method in order to convert bioenergy to some either power or heat. So then we have some energy management and control projects in order to more effectively utilize bio and renewable energy. So that's basically the story I want to talk about. So there are two discontinued major networks of centers of excellence. So I was involved in both of them. However, they are now discontinued. So one is called Biofuel Net, and the colleague here, the Professor David Levin from Manitoba and myself, we worked in the same team for the Biofuel Net Canada, and the other one called Carbon Management Canada. So those are very good, great networks of centers of excellence. However, they couldn't get the renewal from the government. So that's the question behind that is why, right? So those are very excellent group of researchers we produced lots of HQPs, we published lots of papers, but we couldn't survive. So what's the problem? So that's Biofuel Net and Carbon Management Canada. So I just want to bring this question to you, so understand why we cannot survive somehow. So for those two different networks, we have a project called Biofuel Combustion for Alternative Applications for the metals. Obviously, we can use biofuels, biodiesels for cars, right? And for carbon management, so we can either capture CO2 or we can sequester the CO2 underground. So that's basically two other projects are involved. So then the question is this, really, the big fact is that everybody believes we can get electricity freely, That means by solar or wind or free. And free electricity can power everything. Wow. So that's kind of anybody kind of some, have some certain degree of trust in this fact, right? So then why hydrogen? Well, hydrogen fuel cells is also very hot because hydrogen somehow you can convert electricity to hydrogen. Then you can store hydrogen, manage hydrogen. Then you can use it. That's okay. Hydrogen is okay. Then why bioenergy? Bioenergy, we can use biomass for power generation. That's okay, but you have to compete with solar, wind, and nuclear. Are you still green enough or clean enough? Or cost effective, right? Or for transportation. So then you have to compete with batteries, hydrogen fuel cells, even some natural gas fueled vehicles, right? So then what's the real value of the bioenergy? So those are questions, but of course I have answer. Bioenergy is good. For power generations, we don't want to compete with the large-scale solar, wind, nuclear, large-scale power production, but for some specific regions, geological regions, under some specific situations, biomass is very efficient to convert fuel energy to heat and power, right? So I'm going to give you an example. So then for the transportation, biofuel is still fuel. I don't treat battery as a fuel, or the hydro I don't even look at it as a fuel, because they are kind of the secondary energy carriers. They are not the primary energy. Right? Biofuel is a fuel. So liquid fuel, of course, have a lots of advantage over the other fuels. Then, so most likely, in order to use energy from biomass, so we need a combustion. So that's my research background, right? So if you have biodiesel from very efficient and cost-effective and advanced technology, so you still need to use it. So normally, you are going to use a combustion-based energy conversion system in order to get energy out, right? Okay, so then if you have combustion, the biggest problem is smoke or some other combustion air pollutants. So then how can you deal with that? So that's kind of the loss of smoke actually come from transportation, right? So then combustion need to be more efficient and produce less pollutants, include soot part, like carbon particles, and also NOx and SOx. So there's still combustion research highly related to the bioenergy utilization, right? So that's the first topic I want to introduce today. So basically, there is a new technology for the biomass gasification, but they are not combustion-based. For conventional gasification technology, so basically use combustion to produce heat, then use part of heat in order to gasify your biomass. So then, because of combustion, so you are going to have lots of bioproducts of combustion in your produced gas. So therefore, you don't have a high purity of your produced gas. But this technology, they get rid of combustion. So they directly use heat produced by some heat carrier balls, heat carrier material. So basically, you can use some either electricity or waste general heat to provide the high temperature to heat up these heat carrier balls. Then the heat is transferred from heat carriers to the biomass. So then you can have a very good, well-controlled gasification process. So you can produce a high purity produced gas. It's good for either you use a power generation or you can use an FT process to produce liquid gas, right? Liquid fuel. So that's one technology. So we kind of separate the combustion from gasification. So that's a technology we co-developed with the industry partner. And I'm going to skip this. So we model the entire process in order to optimize the operating conditions. So that's kind of an example about how to model that just one gasification section. So you need different reactors to look at the energy and mass balance. And so that's some results we compared to the measurement. Meanwhile, we did some life cycle assessment. So we look at 6 locations in Ontario and Alberta. So then we look at what's the quality, what's the energy content of biomass and these 6 locations. Then we do the study. So basically compare the life cycle energy and environmental costs. So you have a material collection, collection, you have transportation, then you have the waste to energy, biomass, gasifier, so then you have produce electricity. So then that's a whole study. So then basically we look at the different feedstocks for the process. So we look at the wood residues, we look at the forest residues, and also we look at the standing trees, and also the third one is waste. For example, for that small location, we still have the municipal waste, right? So those are 4 different samples we look at, and I'm going to pass more. So the last one, actually, I cannot come back. So we have some reasonable assessment about the cost and benefit in terms of energy and environment in these 6 locations, right? So the last topic is about this kind of the smog. So we want to get rid of particulates from combustion of biofuels, for example. Biofuels still have lots of carbon, then incomplete combustion is going to produce lots of particles. And in the air or in the exhaust, these particles become some nucleate. So they are going to absorb the surrounding pH large molecules that produce PM 2.5 or PM 10. So those are sources of particulate matters. So then I'm not going to toss test. So we developed some different catalysts in order to combust those particles under lower temperature. So those are structures. Basically, we want to generate lots of area in order to react the carbon nanoparticle better. So then we have some adjust the path for the mass and heat transfer. So adjust those structures in order to decrease temperature and enhance the combustion efficiency. I just want to show you one. Yeah, so how can I play those 2 different?
You want to go back?
No, I want to play the videos. Can I do it?
Let me give you one.
If it's, yeah. So those are just like a very straightforward demonstration for 2 different cases. So the left image or video, so we have the suit and 500 degrees C, right? So the right is the suit with the catalyst and 500 degrees C. So then we put into TEM, we change the environment, we give a little bit 1 bar of oxygen. So that's ETM, environmental TM. So then clearly you can see, at the same temperature with the catalyst, all those particles is going to eat by those catalyst nanoparticles. The length bar over there is 200 nanometer, right? So, but without catalyst, you cannot combust soot. So the clearly demonstrate with some help of a nano catalyst, so we can get rid of these particulate matters from the biodiesel combustion. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop here. Thank you so much.
Okay, it's time for us to ask our panelists some questions. I'm going to ask people with questions to please come up to one of the microphones so that we can hear you. And it looked like the one at the back wasn't working too well, so maybe come to one of the ones at the front. Yeah. All right. Okay,
Hi.
Thank you, Colin.
You're welcome. Tej, this question for you. You said that North America is far behind Europe in AD technology. Can you explain why?
I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think Europe is landlocked. They don't have a lot of space. We have a lot of space, relatively cheap real estate. I think of the Netherlands. The Netherlands is basically a country that's underwater to begin with. They have 16 million people in a 300 by 100 kilometer country. They don't have the space to do landfills all over the place, so they've explored better technologies for managing their products. And I think they're just a little bit more environmentally conscious than we are here. I think we also have a lot of sort of very big, large waste management companies that own the space. And quite frankly, it's a bit of it's a push and a pull for the waste. A lot of companies here make money landfilling waste. So that's an economic tension that is very hard to overcome because the solutions that I'm talking about are all more expensive than landfilling. So that's an economic dimension that has to be sorted out.
Armagon. Yeah.
Hi, we actually have received a question from one of our graduate students. He sent me an email and he's asking, what's the biggest technical and economical barrier when it comes to the deployment of bioenergy in the province of Ontario?
Great question. Maybe, actually, I think this would be a great question for each one of our panelists to give an opinion on. Would you guys be okay with that?
Yeah, I would
Rashmi?
like to answer for it. The major barrier is the production cost. Whatever the technology till now we come up, the production cost is high, and at the end of we end up with some residues that also again creating a problem for its disposal. But that is not the end. Still we have the solution. Those residues, still we are making it like a circular platform. We can say circular bioeconomy where we can use it for other things. So like Tay's last cartoon was there. It was like someone trash is someone treasure. So it is in the same way. All the waste is not the waste, is actually a resource. The thing is that we have to use it wisely. So only barrier is economics.
Okay, Trevor.
I think that one thing that you always have to keep in mind is, new technologies competing with mature technologies on the same economic basis is always going to be challenging.
Tesh.
All right, so my answer to that is it's from, again, back to the waste side of things, it's your government. So again, the stuff I'm talking about is more expensive than the traditional practice or the conventional practice. It costs, just as a perspective, to go to take your waste to Michigan and dump it in a hole there is almost free. So if you don't have a choice in the matter, why wouldn't you do that? So someone has to take away that choice, and as I mentioned, that's what California just did, because they're fairly progressive, so they took away the choice. You can't do it anymore, you can't put it in the landfill. So we need regulation here, because there's no necessarily economic driver to do this yet. Energy pricing in North America is not so high that it sustains the economics of these projects by itself. It just doesn't. It may one day, it does in some places of Europe, so here we need better regulation. That's the biggest barrier.
Okay, John.
Yeah, I think I agree with my colleagues here. So I don't think there's a big barrier for technology development. So, but the economic and social, societal should be the major ones.
Thank you. Thanks.
Sorry to hog the microphone, but
Go for it.
it's kind of interesting to me. Where would you say most of the drive comes from with respect to investing in renewable bioenergy technologies? Does it come from private sector or from the cities? Because I know Tej talked about the city of Toronto, Montreal, and California, but I had Suez, GHD doing it. So where does most of the, and it's for anybody on the panel, where does most of the investment and drive come from?
Maybe I'll start on that one quickly. So I think what you're going to find, and what we're already finding, is that some of the municipalities are investing in this. The City of Toronto plant I showed, they own that plant, so they invested it. That's a $78 million plant, and they took money out of their municipal tax base. Their residents are generally happy to pay that, so they can avoid landfilling. But really, one of the dimensions there is they don't have a landfill anywhere near them, so it's cheaper for them to keep the material in the city and deal with it locally. The real investment driver is the private equity funds. There was a day long ago, not that long ago, when solar and wind attracted a lot of green investment. Those markets are highly saturated now. There's a lot of money that's already been deployed. There's not a lot of prime projects to be done there, and it's fairly conventional technology. So now what we see is those people who funded the big solar arrays and the big wind farms are moving into the bioenergy space because it's relatively clean ground. So big equity firms from both North America and from beyond are really investing in this market now. That's what we've seen.
And mostly in India and Mexico, I study the market. The investment is coming mostly from the government, because government going to handle all the waste what is generated by the cities. So they need the solution immediately than any industry or any person. So most of the things is from government.
Okay, I have a question for the panelists, mostly for Rashmi, Trevor, and John. So I think Tej has emphasized a lot that it's almost not economical yet. So in some ways, investing in bioenergy projects is a bit of a virtuous situation, okay? Or maybe you don't have a landfill available anymore. From a scientific perspective, what are the key challenges that we need to solve for these technologies to become cheaper and more competitive? And maybe if the three of you from the research perspective, could address what you see as the core challenges in solving that problem.
I'll start from me. Like the major challenge, as I mentioned, is economics. And the second I will say to what is the byproduct is producing during the process, that should get utilized properly. For example, if you're producing hydrogen, we end up with a lot of volatile fatty acid. That volatile fatty acid should get consumed properly by bacteria for producing bioplastics or methane or other those kind of product. So the major thing is integration. Like people are working in various fields, methane, hydrogen, bioplastics, biodiesel. But the thing is that to make it sustainable and make it economical viable, we need to integrate all the processes at one platform. Then only we'll come up with some valid solution which actually practical and can be delivered to the society.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so, and we mentioned the two major technology in order to make the biofuel, for example, for biodiesel. So one is fermentation or digesters. Another one simply is based on gasification, then you have FT processing to make some liquid fuels, right? So they are so different. So one is very slow. You look at the results from the fermentation, so basically look at 1,000 hours or long, right? But the gasification is very fast. So then we have different issues to address. For example, for gasification, do we have enough feedstock in order to have a reasonable scale of power production or liquid fuel production? So that's something we need to consider scientifically. In order to make these fuels, I don't think there's a huge challenge scientifically, or we can break some real breakthrough in making these things. So yeah, but technology development or find a good location, have a lot of resources, and so that's a thing. I think that's the barrier for me.
Yeah. Trevor, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think that one of the biggest challenges is that scientists really don't, just for the most part, scientists don't have a clue where the challenges are. And they need to figure out, with some help, where to direct their efforts. And they have to be supported in that. So it's really a communication thing across sectors. And that's where networks really have a lot of value.
Can I get in one word edgewise on that?
Absolutely.
Sorry, I have to. I just talk too much, I know. So I really appreciate that comment, Trevor. So interesting to your comment. So if I looked at the market and all the feedstocks available to drive liquid fuels, there's more out there than we can possibly imagine. So the feedstock, and that is not the limitation. I actually think it is a technological, scientific limitation, because when we go and apply these high temperature processes like gasification and pyrolysis to highly heterogeneous materials, highly mixed materials, what we tend to see is dramatic inefficiencies in the conversion to the liquid fuels. So people are trying to do this now. For whatever reason, the syngas that you're producing gasification is too dirty and you can't clean it up sufficiently to get it to the point where you can make a liquid fuel. We see that over and over and over again, and I think that's a great challenge, right? I wish someone could crack that nut, because we really need these technologies out there, but no one has successfully commercially deployed a large-scale gasification facility for mixed wastes to turn them into, say, ethanol that can be blended with gasoline at the fuel pump. We do not have that anywhere in the world at any commercial large scale that's reliable and efficient.
Okay, John, your response.
Some response. Yeah, I think if we look at the challenge, is going to be because energy balance, you cannot everything you have to satisfy the first law, right? So in order to make the liquid fuels from this biomass stuff, you pass through different process. You need energy input. And then the only scientific, not always major barriers put, so you can use kind of catalyst in order to reduce the energy input, right? So that's kind of can we use some better catalyst, cost-effective catalyst? So then we can either speed up or we can produce more.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. And any more questions from the audience before we conclude our panel today? No? Okay, we'd really like to thank all 4 panelists for their great talks and for joining us here this afternoon.